Okay, so hi everyone, welcome you all in our course data analysis using RProgramming, and today we are on the session 14 and we are going to discuss about function. Okay, so before starting today's sessions, let me give a little recap what we have covered in our previous sessions so that you all will be on the same page. So in our previous sessions we have discussed about conditional statements, and in the conditional statements we have seen that there are two types of statements are there. One is that which is controlling the program, okay, based on some conditions, that is called as conditional statement, right? Another type of conditional programming comes under the topic of loop. Okay, whenever we wanted to replicate a certain amount of code or certain task we wanted to perform repeatedly. Okay, so for that type of task we are performing the loop structures into our programming part. Okay, so by using those conditional statements as well as looping statements, right, so we will develop a functions. Okay, so what is the use of function? Firstly I will introduce you about the function, and once everyone will be kind of understand the concept of function, then I will move ahead with the use cases. Okay, but before starting the functions, let me give a little story that how you can think of a functional programming, why functional programming is very much important, and how it will be help you out in your general programming uh, works. Okay, so like for example, suppose there is a university. Okay, and in an university there is a multiple types of departments are there. Okay, you know that there is a university and over there you are having multiple departments, right? So suppose if industry is going to conduct any examination. Okay, so just for conducting an examination, university system has different steps, right? And those steps is being allocated to different types of resources, right? So now coming to the very initial topic. Okay, before that let me share my screen and write the same thing onto the code. Okay, so like for example, there is a university examination. Okay, examination, right? In this university examination, the first thing is that setting up the paper. Okay, exam paper. So there is a one panel who is going to set the examination paper, right? Now another department is that uh, managing the student and centers. Okay, at which centers the examination will be conducted and how many participants will participate into that particular examination, so those details handled by a separate team. Okay, those person will manage the students and the number of centers or the place of centers where the examination will be conducted. The third thing is that uh, invigilator invigilators. Okay, so the role of invigilator is that they will find out the papers. Okay, and they will distribute the copies and they will look into the students that no one should do the cheatings. Okay, so each and every task will be performed by the investigators, invigilators, right? And the fourth team is maybe uh, copy check and marks allocation, right? So this is the separate department. Okay, like whoever is setting up the examination paper, it's not necessarily that they will also going to test the exam copy as well. Okay, there may be some different kind of teams is there who over their subject matter expert are there, they are going to test the examination copies, right? So and also they will assign you the marks. Now fifth department will be publishment of the results, right? Publishment of the results. So let me take a pause by keeping only 5 points over here. We are having so many types of points are there, but those points are very common, okay, and mostly in most of the universities throughout in pan world, they are also following the same structures, like they are setting up the examination paper, managing the student and centers. They have the concept of invigilator, they have copy check and marks allocation, and they also have the publishment of the results, right? So can you imagine that if a one person or maybe a single team will perform all these tasks, is it easy? No, this will not always be easy to handle such kind of a bigger situation. Okay, so if you consider this university examination as a bigger problem, okay, then how you easily able to deal this particular situation, right? So you are only able to deal with this particular bigger problem by dividing this bigger problem into some smaller problems. Okay, so like for example, here you divide this bigger problem of conducting a university examination. You are having a 5 different small problems, okay, and those problems will be solved by the different teams, right? And if their efforts are accumulate, okay, means the team who is setting up the exam paper, okay, and who is managing the student and center. So if all those teams, all those kind of a number of persons, okay, who involved in those activities will combine together, then you will see that their activities will automatically solve the bigger problem. Okay, it means that whenever you are having a very big problem, okay, same thing is into the programming activities as well. Okay, when you are having a very bigger problem, so the first and foremost important thing is that start thinking about its different module, that how you can solve it. Okay, so like if you remember in our in our first session probably or second session, I introduced you about the different steps of analytics. Okay, that what are the different steps are there, like firstly you will deal with the data preparation activities, after that you will go for the data visualization activities, then descriptive statistic calculation, then after that you will go for the inferential statistics and model fitting, right? And after that you will go for the publishment of the results, right? So those are basically the tasks, okay, those are basically tasks just to do a analytics, right? So in here analytics is the bigger problem, and you divide the whole bigger problem into small tasks. Same thing over here as well, like we are having a bigger problem and we are dividing the problem into 5 small components, and if all those components will be solved together, then you will see that the problem will automatically be solved, right? So this is the concept is called as dividing the bigger problem into some small functions, okay, or you can say the functional problems, right? So if those functional problems will be solved, then if you accumulate all those functional problems solutions, right, then you will see that the bigger functional problem will automatically be solved. That actually leads the concept of functional programming, right? So over here in the programming activities, sometimes you may have a bigger problem. So at that time firstly you will think and you will divide the whole problem into smaller chunks, and you will write a code for those chunks, okay, and whenever it is needed, okay, instead of writing the huge code for that, you will use that particular small chunk, okay, or maybe the alias of that particular chunk. This is called as the function, okay, that function can be used and the problem will automatically be solved. Okay, so for example, let me tell you about a function, like for example mean. Okay, how you will calculate the mean into the programming. Okay, so in general, in the general notation of the program kind of a mean, you know that how the mean will be calculated. Mean is nothing but sum of the observations divided by the number of observation, right? Sum of the observations divided by number of observations, right? So this is simply the formula how you will implement and calculate the number of means, right? So here you are having two things. First is sum of the observation. The first task is that whenever you are having a data, then you will go for calculating the sum of the observations. So whatever the observations are there, firstly you will go and calculate the sum of those observations, right? And after that the second task is that just to calculate the number of observation. It means that the count, how many numbers are available over there, right? So this is called as mean, right? So here you are seeing that the, let's suppose since for sure this mean is not a very bigger problem, but here you can also see that this problem can be broken into two components. One is that sum of the observation. This component is altogether a very different component, okay, where you will only what you will do, you will only do the sum of the observations, right? So maybe using the loop concept of looping, you can perform the sum, okay. Or maybe there are some specific functions are available into R, okay. You can use those functions and you can calculate the sum of the observations, okay. Similarly, you can calculate the number of observations using the looping concept, or maybe using the length function, right? So this bigger problem, okay, for sure, right. This may consider as a bigger problem, and this bigger problem can be divided into two components. One is which calculate the sum of the observation, another which is going to calculate the number of observation, right? So here two types of things are there, so you can divide those two things into two small chunks, and whatever the outcome is coming from those two chunks, what you will do, you will just divide number of sum of the observation divided by number of observation, and based on that you will get the mean, right? So this is called as functions, okay. So here mean, right? So in our programming we are having generally two types of functions, okay. In general programming we are having two types of function. One is called as inbuilt function, another is called as user defined function, okay. So like if whatever what is called as inbuilt function, okay. Now types of functions, okay. So types of function, majorly we are having two types of function. One first is called as inbuilt function, and another is called as user defined function, right? So what is the meaning of inbuilt function and what is the different meaning of user defined function? So inbuilt function means what the function is inbuilt inside the R itself, okay. Like for example, when you install R into your machine, okay, so what are the different functions which is already been available into the R software, okay, which is comes as a just use, okay, just a use, you are not developing those functions, right? So those are called as inbuilt function. So like for example, you are seeing multiple types of functions into like for example mean, okay. So mean is a one function, right? And you are having like if is itself a function, right? Similarly, you are having standard deviation, you are having one function, right? So there are multiple functions are available into R, which is coming inbuilt, okay. Also if you are not having some of the functions on a area specific analysis, okay, so you definitely you are going to install the different packages, okay. I introduce your packages in our first or second lecture, right? So packages is basically an extended work, okay. So whatever the task in general we can perform in our general R programming, or you can say the base R programming, in a very huge steps, these steps can be combined together and form a function, and those functions can be combined together form a package, okay. Those packages can be downloaded so that we can utilize those functions, okay. So whatever the inbuilt function are coming in with the R along with the function which is available into the packages, okay, so those are called as inbuilt function, right? Other functions, like for example, suppose if you wanted to develop a such some specific functions, okay. So like for example, if you wanted to perform a specific job, and that job is not earlier being solved by anyone, okay, or maybe they have solved but they do not think about the function, okay, they have only just solved that particular problem, right? So at that time what you will do, you will customize the functions, you will define a function as per your requirement, and based on that particular requirement this function will work, okay. So this is called as user defined function, right? So what is the difference you find out between those two functions? Inbuilt function are those functions which is available or come with base R and extended, right, extended packages, right? So these are called as inbuilt function. But sometimes when you wanted to solve a specific problem, and for that problem you wanted to customize a function, okay, that function is called as user defined function. You will create by your own for your specific problem, okay. So this is the concept of function, right? So now what are the different types of inbuilt function we are using in our day-to-day life? Okay, so I'll introduce a few. Okay, and maybe you can also check into the Google that what are the different functions are available. Some of the statistical functions are there, some of the general programming functions are there. Okay, there's a huge list of functions are available, right? In general, we can use the function, we can solve a bigger problem. But sometimes when you will not able to find any specific function, but you wanted to develop a specific function by your own, okay, you can develop, no problem at all. Okay, so under the inbuilt function, so firstly what I will do, let me call a data set. Okay, so let me call a data variable 23, 24, 56. Okay, yeah, so this is basically a data vector I just created. Okay, and so different inbuilt function I will show you, and how this function will work I'll tell you in more details. Okay, so let's suppose I wanted to calculate the mean of this particular variable. Okay, so what I will use, there is a one function available into R is called as mean function. Simply mean function is taking an argument. Remember, I am telling function and argument. So function is its name like mean, and in this bracket this is called as mean function, and whatever the parameter is being passed into this particular thing. Okay, like for example x is passed as a parameter over here, so x will be treated as the argument of that particular function. Okay, so mean of x means calculate the mean for x variable, right? So you can see over here into the console window, you are getting 57.28571. Okay, it means that the mean of this particular data is 57 point this. Similarly, we have functions like sd. Okay, we can calculate the sd for that. Okay, we can calculate the variance for that. Okay, or you can calculate the sum of the observation over there, sum of x, and you can calculate the length of the observation. Okay, length of the observation, length of x, right? So these are the different means this is a huge list. Okay, you are having thousands of functions available inside the R. Okay, as per the need, as per the requirement, you can learn and you can explore those functions, right? But today, in today's class, our aim is not to introduce with you the inbuilt function. Instead of that, I will introduce you about what is the concept of user defined function. Okay, so now, so if you see here this any of the functions, like for example length. Okay, if I'm talking you about length, right? So length function is okay, is coming with the example like length of x, right? It means that here we need to pass a data set, okay, or a variable for which it will calculate the length, right? So for example length of x, if I will pass here length of x, so if x is a data vector I have, okay, and for that it will calculate the length, right? So I will run it and I will find the length of that particular thing. So what the things you are seeing over here, one thing you are seeing there, the function name, okay, and the required parameter on which this particular function will work upon, right? So like for example in the length, you are required to just pass a variable, okay, and for that variable this length function will work and it will give us back the number of observation available into this particular variable, right? So two things you have seen over here, the first is that the function name. Okay, function name. The second thing is the required parameter, right? So depend on the required parameter what you are having. Okay, you are required to just use those particular parameter into this particular function, right? So similarly, like for example in sum you need to have pass some variables, in the length you need to pass some variables, in the mean you need to pass some data. Okay, similarly sd and variance you need to pass some data, and based on that data these things will be automatically calculated, right? Now, coming to the user defined function, let's suppose you wanted to calculate the mean. Okay, so you wanted to calculate the mean, so you are having a mean function itself available. Okay, but also you can calculate the, you can design your own functions just for calculating the mean, right? Maybe you wanted to calculate a mean of a different type. Okay, so like different type means, so there's a multiple ways just to calculate the mean, and if you wanted to calculate the mean using the different method, or maybe you wanted to calculate the mean of the removing of higher observations, maybe you wanted to calculate the mean of removing the lower observations. Okay, maybe you can customize this particular mean thing, okay, as per your requirement, right? At that time whatever the mean function is available into this R, okay, this will not work. Okay, why? Because current mean function, what you are seeing in front, what you are seeing in front of you, mean of x. Okay, this function is just it just taking all the values equally, okay, independent and identically distributed, right? Sorry, independent values, right? So it will take all the values and gives the equal weight to all observation, and it will calculate the mean of that data, right? But like for example, you wanted to calculate the mean of giving a higher weight to the lower values, lower weight to the higher values, bigger values. Okay, at that time you need to customize this particular function, mean function, and you need to update a little bit, okay, as per your requirement, right? So no need, you need to create a function by your own so that you can customize the particular operation into this particular function, right? So firstly I will tell you about how you can calculate the function, okay, how you will create a function, and after that I will tell you what are the different types of functions are there under the user defined function. Okay, so like for example, suppose I wanted to create a function, then how I need to define, I need to define a function name. Firstly, func I'll here name is function name, okay, and I need to specify here function, right? So this is two things is very important, right? So this is called as function name, okay. So you can name any of the function name over here, okay. So like for example, mean is there, okay, so mean is named as function name, okay. Function name will be called as mean, right? So function name is defined over here, and after that you need to write the function, okay, and in the function you need to create a bracket, okay. In this space you can pass the argument, okay. Sometimes you need to pass the argument, and sometimes if you wanted to fix up the argument, sometimes you don't want to fix up the argument. Sometimes you wanted to use the parameter call by reference, call by value, okay. Different types of functions are there, okay. Different types of function calling is there, okay. I'll tell you in more details in coming minutes, okay. But how you will calculate it, I'll tell you one by one. So firstly you will write a function name, okay, and after that you will write a function, right? And you need to pass the arguments, right? And after that you need to open a bracket, okay. This bracket is and after that you need to specify the operation, right? You need to specify the operation. So this is called as function definition, okay. So this is called as function definition. So how you are defining, so you are defining that the function is defined as function name, okay. What the function name you wanted to give, you will give the name over here, and after that you will arrow symbol, and after that you will write the function, okay. Inside the function you will pass the arguments, and inside the this particular function is scope, you will write the operations, okay, what the operation you wanted to perform, okay. So let me create a mean function by my own, okay. So I will create a mean function, but you cannot name it in this way, okay. So you need to write, let's say mean one, because mean is just a keyword, and if you remember in our first or second class I told you about keywords, that keywords cannot be used as a variable name, okay. So this is the basic kind of a programming practice that you should to remember, that whenever any specific functions are already available into your programming language, okay, you are not you are requested not to use those particular functions, okay, as a variable name, okay. This will not work even, okay. So here I will give mean1, okay, or maybe I can give a name like me1, okay, and I will write the function in this way. Simply I'll pass the variable x over here, okay, and what I will do in this way, so simply I will return, so here return results, right? Return results. So whatever the result is coming, you need to pass it over here into this return function, right? So it will return the output. So like for example, here I will write maybe a is equal to sum of the observation divided by number of the observation, okay, length of x, and just to return it, return a, okay. So now when yeah, this is the function definition I have written, right? So now this function is almost working similar to the function which is available inside the R, okay. Let's perform an example, okay. So let's say that, and we are having data like 1 comma 4 comma 6 comma 5 comma 4 comma 3 comma 8 comma 7 comma 9 comma 3 comma 2, okay. This in this way we are having this data, right? So let me apply the main function, okay, which is inbuilt available into our R, right? So I will call this main function. I'll write the data, right? And you can see mean is coming like 4.727273, right? Now what the function I had created, okay, let me use that particular function and just to check whether what the function I have written, this function is working appropriately and calculating correct mean for this particular data or not. Okay, so I will call the same in the same way me1, okay, and in the me1 I will pass the data, and you can see both are same, right? Mean of that and me1 of that, okay. It means that what the function I wrote over here, okay, I wrote in this way, okay, this is a very correct definition I had written. That is why we are getting exactly equal output using those two functions. One is inbuilt function and another is user defined function, right? So this is the way how you can create the functions, right? Now what are the important things you need to keep in your mind, okay? But before moving ahead, so maybe if anyone have any doubt, any question up to this point, maybe please ask, or maybe I can continue with the session. Any question? Okay, perfect, perfect, yeah. So now functions, okay, functions, user defined function, basically user defined function, right? So user defined function can be null argument function, okay, null argument function. Second is function call by value. Third is function call by reference, and the fourth is function comes with default value, okay. So if you remember in our previous sessions, sometimes we were specifying some of the parameter values, okay, we are passing some of the parameter values, and sometimes we are not specifying any values, we are considering as a default, right? If you remember in the matrix function, okay, we were specifying by row is equal to true, okay, then it was taking, and if you are not specifying by row is equal to true, it was by default taking by row is equal to false, okay. So some of the function is already being defined by setting up the default values, okay, those function is called as default value function, right? So now let me explain one by one each function, okay, and how this function will be created and how this function will be called into our general programming. So now the first function is null argument function. Null argument function means the function which do not have any argument inside it, okay. It means that which will be created without specifying any of the parameter, right? So what is the use of those particular functions, okay? But before that, let me tell you how you will create it, and after that what the functionality this particular function is serving, okay. I'll introduce you about those functionalities as well, okay. So firstly you will write here the function name, okay. Maybe I'll give a name over here, msg, okay. Let's say I just given a name message, okay, and I'll write over here function, right? So when we wanted to specify a function which is null argument, right, it means that in this particular function you will not pass any of the argument, right? So what you will do, you will simply write the function, and in the bracket you will left blank, okay. And whatever the operation you wanted to specify over here, right, so you will write all those things into the return, okay. So like for example, happy to see you in the class, and we are learning very good skill. Let's say I have just given this particular message, right? So if I wanted to return this message back to back multiple times, okay, so at that time what you will do, you will just call this particular function, right? Simply if you run this, okay, you will get the same output. Happy to see you in the class, and we are learning very good skills. Okay, similarly if I wanted to print it again, I will no need to write the things again and again. I will just call this particular function, okay, and no need to specify any of the function parameter over here, just to call this particular function msg in bracket, okay, nothing, no parameter need to specify. Okay, so this function is called as null value function. Now why this function is created, okay, what is the use of those functions, right? So in general this type of function is being used for fixed part, okay, whenever you are replicating something, but you are not changing anything into this, okay, at that time you are required to just create a function which does not have any value inside it, okay, just a message kind of thing. So like for example here, suppose if many people are coming into your home, okay, and you are welcome to everyone, okay, welcome in the party. Okay, so suppose you are just giving a party, hosting a party in your home, and whoever is coming to your home, okay, you wanted to just greet them by telling a message that welcome in the party, right? So what you are doing in this way, just write a function, and every time just call a function, every time just call a function, and it will give a message welcome to the welcome in the party, okay, welcome in the party, right? No need to write every time welcome in the party, just to call this particular function, and function itself will automatically tell you, automatically write the things like welcome in the party, right? So this is called as function without parameter, right? This is called as null function, this null argument function, right? Now now another function is, now you are comfortable with this particular type of function, and immediately you saw that this type of function can be used over there where we are not changing the values, okay. In general, when we are having any kind of a specific message, and this message or this text is being repeated multiple times, okay, so at that time you will use this particular type of functions, right? Other function, second function is called as function called by value, okay. So like for example, if I will create a function like let's say mean, okay, me1, right? So in this mean function, this one, right, and here I will just pass the value, okay, this one, and I will return this like return and sum of x divided by length of x, right? So here this type of function is called as call by value function, right? So why it is called as call by value function, so you can see here, right? So you just use this call a function, and you can create a vector inside it just to pass the values, like for example in this way, and you will get the mean, right? You will get the mean, right? Don't need to specify the variable over here, you can directly pass the values over there, and those values automatically be treated as a data values, okay, and based on that values this particular function will automatically work, and it will calculate the mean of this particular data, right? So this is called as function call by value function, right? So you can have multiple types of functions, okay, multiple values taking functions, okay. So like for example, suppose if I will just create a add function, right, and in this function I'll just pass two values like a and b, okay, and in this a and b, so I will just return nothing but return a plus b, right? So you can specify this function in two ways, okay. The first way is I am telling you about function call by value, right? So what I will do here, so simply I will just write the two values, right? So I will just write two values and it will give me the answer, right? See here, add 2 comma 3 I had written, and it will automatically give me answer 5, right? Similarly if I write two things over here, let's say 7 and 8, okay, it will give me back as 15, okay. This is the answer of just adding those two values, right? So this is called as function call by value, right? So function call by value is a little bit tedious, okay, it's a little bit tricky just to remember that how this function is being created, okay, because like for example here you are just performing simply two values a and b. So if you forget that what is the value of a, what is the value of b, you are interchange, then there will be no impact. But in general, okay, when you are creating a bigger functions, at that time if you misplace the value of the misplace the position of the values, then it may result differently, right? So that is for that things function called by reference came into the picture. Okay, based on that the value will not be changed. Okay, so like for example what I'm telling you about, so like for example add. Okay, so you will do 7 and 8, right? Also you can do in this way 8 and 7, right? 8 and 7, you will get the same result. Okay, this result is not changing. Why this result is not changing? Because these two parameters are treated being equally. Okay, these two parameters are treated as equally. That is why even though you are changing the values, but this result is not changing, right? But sometimes by changing the values the result may different. Okay, so like for example if you have a true and false. Okay, let's suppose you wanted to use one true and one false. Okay, or two true two false. Okay, sometimes you are having some different combinations, right? So in that combinations if something will be true or something will be false is changed interchangeably, then result will be reverse, right? So true will become false and false will become true. Okay, so for just to treat that particular situation, deal with particular situation, you have a new concept called as function called by reference. Okay, so how you will create a function called by reference? Okay, let me tell you. So it's very simple. Okay, so what you need to write? Function, and you need to write the a is equal to a. Okay, whatever the things you can write it, a is equal to not something, whatever the thing you wanted to write you can write it. Let's say I just write it in this way, right? And a is equal to a and b is equal to b. Let's say whatever the things you wanted to specify you can specify it, but for sure I just write it over here. A is equal to a and b is equal to b means a will take the value of a and b will take the value of b. Okay, in that way, right? So now I will just return it. Okay, return, and what I will return? A plus b, right? So this will, okay, yeah, now this will work it. I need to specify a is equal to 7 and b is equal to 8. Okay, so in this way this will work. Okay, sorry, yeah. So here you need to specify a is equal to 7 and b is equal to 8, right? So in this type of functions it is necessary that you need to call the reference first. Okay, reference means the variable, okay, in which the particular value will be placed, right? So like a and b, so a is taking the value as 7 and b is taking the value as 8. Okay, so this is called as functions called by reference. Okay, so every time whenever you are having such kind of functions you need to call these things by using the reference. Okay, so here the position will not be matter a lot, right? So for example suppose if I'll write over here like b is equal to and a is equal to, okay, this will not impact at all into the result, right? But maybe, right, so because in the previous method when we are having the function called by values, okay, over there this may cause some issues. But in this way if you call the particular functions and call by reference, okay, so there will be no issue at all, right? So you always be call any of the function, okay, and you need to specify the parameter name, and based on those parameter name you will pass the values. Okay, and based on those values this particular function will work and it will give us back the good result. Okay, so this is called as function called by reference. Okay, I'll tell you in more details. Okay, maybe I'll demonstrate a very good examples for those functions. Today is just an introduction class. I'll introduce you about that. Maybe in tomorrow or day after tomorrow I will write a bigger program and will tell you about how to develop a big functions using the concept of programming. Okay, now the fourth type of function is function called by default values. Okay, functions with default values. Okay, function with default values. Okay, what are the functions and which type of function is called as default function? Okay, so default function can be specified. Let's say I'm just specifying default def func. Okay, and I will write the functions in this way, like function a is equal to a but b is equal to, let's say, 10. Okay, I just specify a fixed value b is equal to 10 over here, right? So this b is equal to 10 is called as default value. Okay, b is equal to 10 will be treated in this function as a default value. whenever you are having some values passed, okay, at the place of b, then this function will take those values. But if in this particular function, if the value of b will not passed, okay, at that time b will be treated as 10, okay, because it is by default set up in this particular function definition, okay. So that is why this is called as default parameter, right? So I will write over here return and a plus b, okay, let's say, and you just run it, and in this way you will create the default function, okay. Now how I will use this particular function, okay, so I will use this particular function like okay, so I will just call this particular function like def func, okay, and def func, and in this way you need to write here. You can see automatically a definition is coming like a is equal to a and b is equal to 10, because b is equal to 10 is by default set with this particular function, right? So let's say I will pass the value as 10 over here, okay. If I will run it over here, right, you will see automatically you are getting the result as 20, okay. Why result 20 is coming? Because b is default set on the level of 10, and you are just passing the value of a is equal to 10, and b is default taken by this its function itself. That is why 10 plus 10 is equal to 20, this function is returning back, right? Now if I will change the values, okay, def func, and a is equal to maybe 10 and b is equal to 9, right? So I will change the values, right? Then you will see the result is coming as 19, okay. Why 19? Because whatever the fixed value was there, okay, whatever the fixed value was there, this value you are not using. You are just calling some value as per your requirement, okay, as per your requirement, okay. You are not taking the constant value, okay. You are specifying your own value. That is why your result is changing now, okay. So this is called as function with default value. What is the benefit of this type of functions? So sometimes in some of the functions, like you saw in our previous classes as well, there's a lot many functions are there over there, huge list of parameters are there, but we are only just passing few of the parameters into the function, okay. Rest of the parameter is being treated as fixed, okay. So if those parameters are treated as fixed, okay, so it means that this is taking the default values. No need to specify all those parameters, okay, into this particular function. Only some of the parameter you will specify, and some of the parameter will default taken by this particular function, okay. And if you wanted to tweak the result, you will specify a particular fixed parameter as a value into this particular function, so that automatically you will see that your result will be changed, okay. So this is called as function call by function call as a default value, okay. So yeah, so this is all about today's session, and maybe in day after tomorrow's class I will demonstrate you different types of functions, and how I'll give a very live demonstration that how you will develop a function, okay. And how you can think of the functions, okay, by my using my ipad pen and paper based theory, okay. I'll tell you about the concept of flowchart, and how you will divide all your problems into small component, and how you will create the functions, okay. So maybe this is all about today's session. Let's meet on maybe day after tomorrow. So thank you everyone. Bye for